does sound silly, but I gotta go drink a protein shake really quick. I just got done working out, so I'll be right back. I can probably drop you off.
What time do you need to leave, Ellie?
I have work at like 1:40, so the sooner we get started, the better.
It seems like you got a lot going on this semester.
Yeah, I do. It's been a really wild semester. It's really I'm ready for it to be over.
Yeah.
I've overcommitted myself to a lot of things.
All right, guys.
You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited about this topic. I think we're gonna have some good discussions.
Sweet.
So, I guess the first thing is let's talk about employment at will and some of the exceptions that you guys remember.
Okay. So, if I remember right, it's pretty standardized for especially for I think it's kind of exclusive to the U.S. if I remember right. But the exceptions are if there is a contracted agreement. So, for example, if an employer agreed to hire somebody for X amount of years, then they have to commit to that agreement. And the flip side is same for an employee. So if an employee says, I'll work for you for 3 years, and then they cut out at 2 years, that's an issue for the employer, because a lot of times they'll invest in the employee's trainings, maybe some outside trainings. And so it doesn't make sense for the company to hire them if they're going to leave before 3 years. And so it goes both ways, but I remember that kind of being one of the exceptions.
Yeah, that's one.
I'm trying to think. Will you repeat the question?
What are the exceptions to employment at will?
It's kind of just like what Brenton was saying, like the contract agreement, like they have the terms stipulated in the contract, so like you kind of just have to follow those, and that's why you have a contract, is so that you can't be like, well, I thought that blah 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 blah, because if it's written out in a contract, then there's nothing to argue with, and that way they can avoid like lawsuits and different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Another circumstance, if I think I remember right, there's certain like racial discrimination,
yeah.
Biasing against like gender, preference or whatever, or sex preference. I'm not sure what that's called. And then, so there's race, gender, disability. I mean, there's just like a few different exceptions to that rule.
Yeah. So a few others that were mentioned in the meeting was not only, I mean, obviously, at will, if you have like a specific contract, a time, that would be one, but also if there's an implied contract. So that means that basically, if we remember like a few weeks ago when we studied about those people who got like really good performance appraisals and stuff like that, or like their employees said that they were doing a good job, and then kind of out of the blue, they're fired. That would be kind of an implied contract, because you're not telling them how they're doing.
Yeah. I remember along those lines. Now it's kind of coming back to me. I think I remember if specific, like if certain promotions or expectations have been like stated or something like that, then it's another breach of that I don't know, agreement or whatever. So I'm trying to look it up as I'm talking here.
Another one is obviously if the employer asks the person to do something that is illegal and then fires them for refusing to do that. That's considered violation of public policy, and that's also an exception to that.
Yeah. No, I definitely remember reading that in the, which one was it? The well, they're all Harvard business schools, but it was like the one, it started with an H. What was his name? I can't remember his name.
So I'm kind of going down the list. Another one of them is there's like notice requirements. Like if the employee, you know, there's a few exceptions. You know, if they're under temporary employment or if it's like assumed to be a temporary position, like if it's a temporary factory or whatever. But if there's like X amount of employees, like the management or like, you know, whatever, they have to give them a specific amount. I think it was 60 days if I remember right. Yeah. But they have to give them at least a decent notice so that way they can start looking for other employment.
So part 2 is talking about the case about Terry and Phil.
Totally.
So they've kind of broken it down into 3 different sections. What kind of financial obligations, legal, and ethical obligations they have to each person. So if we're talking about, sorry?
No, go ahead. So
if we're talking about Terry, what impact does Terry have on the company's bottom line?
So basically, like kind of what I picked up from the case studies, Terry's, he's kind of worthless really to the company. It sounds like they really don't have any like specified, like he doesn't know what his responsibilities are and he kind of takes up space. And then he gathers information or something like that for different projects, but he doesn't actually implement or do anything. And so kind of, and I know we're taking the perspective of this person that's talking about him, but you know, from the case study, it just talks about he's kind of almost dead weight.
Okay.
Yeah. I think like their financial obligation is just paying them what they said, because I feel like in a lot of like instances, like employers think that because they're in charge, they can cut pay raise or they can cut pay, or if someone's not doing a good job. And I guess that they have that right, but I feel like in this case, they had an obligation to pay them what they deserved. And if they didn't, then they're the ones that are in the wrong.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, along the financial lines, like I guess, like financially, they have a responsibility to pay, like kind of what she was saying. They have the responsibility to pay their employees what they say they're going to pay. But I also think that like, I don't know, they did hire this dude on, and this dude had I don't know what his intentions were with the company or whatever, but he is one of their employees regardless. And if they've pulled him on with the intention of paying him, then they have that responsibility, I guess. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
So
it does.
Would you guys say that by having Terry as an employee, that the company is losing money?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
he's just not. He's not. Yeah, he's just dead weight.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that they're losing money.
What about Phil?
Phil, it sounds like so the difference that I picked up between Terry and Phil is, and I wish I would have read it more recently. I read it, I think, 2 days ago. But if I remember right, Phil is kind of like one of the employees that I feel like if you put him to work and taught him appropriately, he's an employee that has potential to maybe improve, as opposed to Terry, who's just kind of there. And I mean, if he really had a change of heart or whatever, he might be able to to change and do better in the company. But Phil, I feel like, is a project that could potentially be put to use, but Terry's not.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think Phil has more skills that can be improved upon, where Terry just it's a lost cause.
Okay. So, thinking about what we talked about with employee at will, do they have any obligations to Terry and Phil as far as legally?
I just think it depends on the stipulations of the contract, or if there's a contract in play.
Let me check here for.
According to the case, their company does follow the employee at will, and then sometimes they go through a process called the PIP, which kind of, I guess, gives them a few chances before they end up firing them. But would there be any reason why they would be obligated to keep Terry or Phil on based on some of those exceptions that we talked about?
So, if you remind me, I don't know what score Phil got on his PIP, but the problem is the management is pressuring her to give Terry a better review. So he's basically supposed to receive a 3.0 or higher, or whatever it is. Which, if that was the case, they wouldn't have grounds to actually get rid of Terry, because according to his performance reviews, he's doing fine. And then, if I remember right, I think that even though Phil has potential, according to his performance review, he's only getting a 2.5. And so they would have grounds to get rid of him. But I think in the case, it kind of was talking that she didn't want to get rid of Phil necessarily. And so, but they don't really, if they were to give Terry that rating, they wouldn't have any grounds to fire him, because according to that performance appraisal, he's doing fine.
So what about the fact that Phil has cancer? Do you think it would look bad if the company thought about firing him?
I think that it might, but at the same time, like my dad has diabetes, and he's had it since he was 3, and like if he's gotten fired, like some could say, well, it's because he's a diabetic and he's sick. But I just everybody has their stuff, and I feel like companies, like, they're doing what's best for the company, not because they have a personal issue.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely an ethical obligation that they need
there definitely is. Like, I feel like if if it's like terminal cancer, if he really is sick and he's gonna be missing a lot of work, then like I would definitely let him go, just for the sake of his health.
But then he wouldn't have any income.
I'm wondering if there's a way where, or maybe he can go on like a paid leave.
Yeah, so I think that's what ended up happening in the case, is that
like a furlough. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, while he was sick, he did end up leaving the company, and they paid him for that time. But now he's back, and he isn't performing as well, but he is healthy again.
I just think he needs time to get back in the swing of things. I don't think that it's that I'm trying to think of my words. I just think he needs to like rebuild his skills, because he was probably gone for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely kind of that, we need to, well, and he's obviously done decent work in the past. And so there's like that, I guess, sort of like obligation to help him get through this. And I don't know. I guess especially like if, I don't know, somebody had cancer, I'd feel pretty bad if I were to just 86 them.
Right.
Yeah, I would too.
So, and you mentioned something before, Brennan, that because of the fact that Terry was getting decent performance appraisals, there is a possibility that if they fired him, he could say that that was a breach of an implied contract.
Yeah.
So this next part, we're gonna just analyze the company's HR practices briefly. So like, what do you guys think about their hiring practices, the fact that these people even are employees? What do you guys think of the PIP? What are your thoughts?
So, I mean, obviously, like some of their hiring practices could be improved but I mean, ironically, everybody's hiring practices could be improved. That's just like, I feel like such a big part of an organization that I just feel like it's neglected a lot. But anyways, so that could definitely improve. And as far as the PIPs go, I feel like they kind of have to have them, but they're not really fulfilling, like, because I think that in the case study from what I took, it was more of a legal protection than an actual, like, what they're claimed to be. So it's like, oh, we're going to put these people on a PIP so that way we can hopefully, you know, train them and do what we need to do and then get them back, you know, involved in what they're working in. But it's like the PIPs are basically just a slap on the finger so that way you can justify firing them, you know, at the end of the day. So I think that that's definitely a pitfall.
So you're saying that it's not necessarily about developing them, but just kind of following procedures so that they can fire them?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm kind of on the same page with that, like with the hiring processes. I think the companies are they're so bad about the hiring and the firing. And like, I'm trying to get an internship right now, and all these people keep saying, well, you don't have experience. And I'm like, well, that's what an internship is for, is to gain experience in the workforce. And I feel like a lot of companies like want you to have all this wild experience, but sometimes when you're just coming out of college, you're not going to have experience. So I kind of agree with what Brenton was saying.
Well, what do you guys think about the fact that they basically hired Terry? I mean, they were doing well financially and stuff, but they basically hired him because he was friends with the boss. So he wasn't qualified whatsoever, but he got hired. And now the manager is wanting to cut him because he doesn't have the correct skills. No, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I think that that sometimes it pays to have connections with people, but at the same time, if you're a boss, you shouldn't be hiring someone just because they're your friend. Like, if you know that they're not qualified, then why would you be hiring them? I just feel like that's like cutting corners, and it's not really fair to other people who are more than qualified and deserving of a position.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the problem is like their lack of regard for that employee, their lack of, you know, consideration, is this person actually going to do what we need him to do, is now falling on the responsibilities of people that are lower than them. And so it's like you guys don't have to you hired him, but you don't have to put up with him not doing anything, and you don't have to put up with, you know, with the, you know, trying to evaluate somebody that's actually not contributing. And so it's like their you know, disregard for what this downstream effects are taking place is just kind of silly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. They don't really have to deal. I mean, besides how they affect the bottom line.
Exactly.
Something else to consider is, you know, in the case, the manager was talking about how, well, I just thought it was sort of annoying that they weren't giving accurate performance appraisals. You know, they're like, oh, well,
I was bothered by that as well.
And the fact that they don't give them honest feedback. I think you can see that in a lot of different, not just businesses, but like in general. Sometimes people only say what's good because they don't want to like offend, but getting feedback is really important. So I think the manager is trying to push against that culture.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that's, I think she's, well, and it said she was blunt, direct, this and that. And I would agree. I think that she's, well, and the problem is like, Anyways, I'll just reaffirm what you're saying is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So for this last part, go ahead and take some time to read like the second half of the 2 tough calls, because it'll tell you what the manager ended up deciding to do.
I am at work currently, so I don't have my computer on me, so I can't read it.
It's okay. I'll see what maybe I can just do this part. Ali, you got to get going here pretty soon anyways, so.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
There's a huge event going on at the school, and I'm in charge of setting up all the cameras, and my coworker had to move home for medical reasons, so it's just me. So it's a little stressful.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So let's see. I guess I can kind of read them out loud do you want me just to do that for the time being?
Yeah, sure.
So it says, this is in reference to Terry. So it says, so I decided to give Terry a 2.5. I was very scared about doing it. I sat him down before the performance reviews came in and said, Terry, let's talk about what is going to happen when you get your review back. I'm going to give you a 2.5. He said, what I thought I would get is a 3.0. Terry said, I knew I wasn't going to get a 3.5, but I was definitely not happy about my plan. I talked with him and said we had recently hired a lot of people who were really superstars. I reminded him that on the interviews, my hire no hire rate was about half what most people's were. We now had really good people on the team, and he acknowledged this. He said things like, Terry looks like who we've hired. What do you think about Michelle? He would say, well, I guess Michael, sorry. Michael is a superstar. He's really great. He said the same thing about several others. Then I said, these people, these are people that we are hiring onto this team. And this is a new makeup of team. How do you think you compare against these people on the team? He was honest and said, I couldn't do what they do. And he said, do you really want me to constantly be constantly on the edge? Okay. I know they're force curve. Do you need to peace out, Ali?
Yeah, I got to go in just a second. But just to be clear, is the doohickey due next week or is it due this week?
I think it's due on the 18th. So it'll be due Tuesday of like 2 weeks from now.
So it's due on the very last day of class. But if we could get it done
by like next week, like midweek or something.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay,
yeah, I think so too.
That's totally fine. We can just keep updated in the group text and let me know
Okay.
if you guys change anything at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, bye guys. Sorry.
Bye.
No worries. See ya.
See ya.
So I'll just go ahead and I guess read through this quietly.
Okay. Hey, I'm almost done with my group meeting.
Sorry if you hear any noise, by the way. I'm eating grapes.
Oh, that's okay. I'm eating lunch too.
Oh, nice. I'm not watching that video thing right now. So, so my understanding, kind of at the end of this, so basically with Phil, they moved him to another part of the company. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, I guess I've read both of them, so we can kind of talk about them.
Yeah. I honestly feel like the manager did an awesome job in handling the situation
I think so too.
because I feel like just in any case that you're firing someone, it's kind of awkward, but the fact that she was so straightforward, especially to Terry, like in saying, you know, you're you're gonna be fired, but it's kind of in your best interest, you know?
I think so too. Well, in the way that she like talked about how, like these are the steps that we're going to take, and it was like a really fluid process. And she, I don't know, it's ironic because I kind of had the same thought when I was reading the case study. I was like, if they're not good, because it sounds like they're both like decent people and maybe
Yeah.
have some different skill sets. So it's like, instead of just getting rid of them, why don't they just put them to work where they need them in the company? And that makes sense to me because there's no reason that, like, I'm sure that there's plenty of other projects and plenty of other teams that could use that their skills. And so I had kind of the same thought, and it was cool that they, kind of, let him go out with dignity, and then they helped him to find another job that was suited for him. And it's like,
Yeah.
if people would just, I mean, I know it takes the extra, going the extra mile, but I just feel like if more companies would do that, we'd have a lot less unemployed people, and we'd have a whole lot. I don't know. I just feel like the whole climate of our work would be a lot better.
Absolutely. Did she do anything that wasn't effective or something that you didn't like?
I just closed it. I wish I wouldn't have done that. I'm opening it again. I don't think so. I can't really think of anything. Is there anything that you came up with? I feel like she handled everything, especially with Terry. I feel like she did an exceptional job, and I guess if she saw that maybe Phil had potential, she could have just put more of an investment in on that. But it's not like she just left him high and dry. So I don't think that it was, I don't think that it was bad of her to send him somewhere else.
Right. I think with the circumstances of him having cancer, like it said, it kind of made him untouchable. So I think what you did for the situation, just putting him in a place where he wasn't really doing anything, but wasn't taking away. I think on the side of the company, I mean, that doesn't really benefit them, but it definitely benefits him. And like, it just smooths things over nicely, you know?
Totally. Well, and it's ironic because one of the recent, I can't remember if it was one of the recent readings, it just talked about how people assume that like cutting extra, employees or whatever is going to make this huge difference. And I'm sure to some extent, like, I mean, it does make a difference, but in this example, it's like one dude, one salary, like what's the difference, and I don't know if they have, multiple cases like that. And if that was but I feel like he's kind of an outlier. His circumstances aren't, as common as other circumstances. So it's like, what's the difference to the company if we can help somebody, be supported through this time in their life?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I can't wait because we learn about all like the hunky dory stuff. Oh yeah, if you treat your employees well, awesome, or whatever. But it's like we've never been in an actual situation where it came down to like, okay, we have to fire this person or else we're gonna start, taking the hit.
Yeah.
So it's harder when you're not actually in the situation, I guess.
I think that's a good point, though, bringing up what we learned last week. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways,
to wrap up, as like a final question, what can we learn from this case about making decisions about termination?
Just be tactful, I think, and just really mindful of what you can do differently than just, you know, than just, I mean, and then also, you know, if you don't agree with how things are done, work around it, I guess, a little bit. Like, I thought it was cool that she realized that the PIPs were ineffective. They didn't accomplish what the company said that they accomplished. And so she kind of worked around that. And
Yeah,
I thought it was cool that she went about it tactfully, creatively, and appropriately. She didn't, you know, she didn't screw the company by any means, but she didn't necessarily follow their strict, you know, kind of ineffective procedures.
Mhm.
So I don't know, but just, I don't know. I think that a lot of people are quick to, you know, and I've been on the recipient side of that. You know, I was late a couple times just because like of personal circumstances, like kind of, I guess, a trying point in my life or whatever. There was a lot going on. I was, you know, moving around a lot. My family circumstances were a little bit crazy, and there's just kind of a lot of stuff going on. And so I was late a couple of times, and the first thing that, you know, they warned me, oh yeah, you need to be on time, you need to be on time or whatever. But I think I was late like 3 times, and then they fired me, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know. And I know that that's a good reason to let people go. You have to, but you know, but if they had maybe asked, you know, hey, like, what is going on? Like, why are you consistently having issues? And then I can explain to him, you know, hey, sorry, you know, I'm kind of, you know, at that point where, you know, my car's having issues, and all this stuff was kind of all happening at once. And if they would have maybe said, okay, well, like, what can we do to help? And then they don't have to worry about training another employee. But it just, you know what I'm saying? I've kind of been on that recipient side of it. And so I'm hoping that when I'm in a position of management, or, you know, directing, you know, other people's jobs, that I'll maybe be a little bit more sympathetic to that, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely feel like with both of these people, she had their interest first above the company's.
Definitely.
I think that's what made the solutions so fitting for the circumstances.
Definitely.
So,
Awesome. Well, I don't know if there's any more questions, but I don't really have any concluding thoughts for the case. I do like this. I do like this structure. I'll be honest. You know, I'm not a huge fan of the quizzes sometimes. You know, I feel like the quizzes lately have been a little bit more straightforward.
mhm.
But I really like the whole Skype thing. I feel like it's way easier than discussion boards. I get so much more out of the discussions.
Yeah, me too.
And so it's nice. And I don't know, I'm actually, if I continue to do online learning or whatever, I'm hoping that I can do more discussions like these, because I feel like they're more beneficial than the crappy discussion boards.
Yeah, I think they're hopefully trying to
Shift away from that. Yeah, it's like, you know, I saw this meme on Facebook. It was like 2 + 2 = 4, and then it was like, oh, that's so insightful. I don't know how you came up with that. Like, you know, it was funny. I like how these are actually real discussions about real problems. So anyways.
Yeah, well, I'll try to get the first half, like the first problem done by this weekend.
Okay.
And so hopefully we can finish the paper by Wednesday.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I've got to do that thing for Brother Guy. My project, our group's project is kind of, well, for one, it's not done.
Yeah.
You know, and we've got to throw that together, and so I'm hoping to get that done this weekend.
He was really willing to help us with the data analysis today.
Well, he actually, so I met with him in his office just because I wanted to get because I knew that our data was going to come. I didn't know he was going to give us an extension. But so I went in, and so that I knew exactly what to do, he like walked me through like each analysis. He's like, so this is what you'll do. You'll do a Pearson's R for this. You'll do this for this and this for this. And so like
by yourself?
No, but my group, you know, and this is no discredit to my group. They're really good kids, and I feel like Chris has been more than willing to jump in. But I just don't think that they're as on top of the stuff, the material, and understanding what exactly to do.
Oh, okay. I understand.
And so I just like, I'm kind of having to just for, and it's nothing, like I said, it's nothing against them, but I need an A on this assignment.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of taking the reins and kind of going the extra mile, just that way I can make sure, like, I'll have them do the writing portion of it, but there's a good chance that that I'll have to kind of redo it, because we turned in an assignment and they did that portion of the assignment, and it was like the only portion of the assignment that was like potentially going to lose points.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm not going to take any points off for this, but he's like, you need to be aware that this, and this. And so I just didn't want to let that happen again, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's all about finding that balance, because I want them to learn and be involved, but I also don't want to get a bad grade. So
Right. Makes sense.
anyways, but you know how that goes. You've done group work before. We did that thing with IO, and that was always a scary thing.
Yeah. And yeah.
Because, and like, I think we've already talked about this, but I feel like Chris, I feel like we crunched a bunch of data. I input like a ton of data, and it took me forever because that wasn't a very speedy process, especially the qualitative stuff. In fact, I got a bad test on a grade in another class because of that crap. But anyways, I feel like there was a couple people that just really carried that project, and I felt like it was kind of like you, Chris, and then everybody else put in effort, but I just feel like there was a couple people that really pulled it, and it's just group work's hard like that.
Yeah.
So.
And it always seems to be that way, even in smaller groups. So.
It really is, and I think honestly, and part of the problem is people like us. Unfortunately, I know that because like we do want it to be done right, and we don't really trust other people to do it. And I do that with my calling. I do that with I probably do with my marriage. I don't know, but Sarah, do I do that? Oh, I don't know. Anyways, but I do. I just have that personality. So, but
hey, are you still cool to study tomorrow at 10?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of and we're gonna study for the development psych. Yeah, where do you want to study at?
The Ricks?
Ricks. Yeah, let's do that. So we can get together for a little bit. I'll double check with Sarah and make sure that's cool. I don't know if she has any plans for tomorrow or anything like that, but
is Lee gonna come?
I don't know. I'll shoot her a text for sure. I feel like that'll be a good study session, and we can go through some of the material. She talked about taking the PQs from number 19 and splitting them up, and like having me be responsible for half and her being responsible for half. So that way we can kind of come together and grab them from each other. And so I don't know if we can set something like that up between the three of us.
I've already finished them. I did them
Oh,
yesterday.
really? Cool. Well, in that case, I guess we'll just kind of meet up tomorrow and we'll go from there, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Well, have a good afternoon. We'll see ya. Doodles.